It's Friday morning, the 13th of March. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the BLANCOLIRIO channel. And yesterday, on 12 March, two KC-135R air refueling tankers were involved in a mid-air collision during Operation Epic Fury. Tail number 8017 was able to successfully land, missing a large part of its vertical fin and rudder. The second aircraft, tail number 3556, was a complete loss. Here's what we know so far. In a recent post by U.S. Central Command, all 6 crew members aboard the one KC-135R refueling aircraft are confirmed deceased, and the aircraft was lost over western Iraq, not due to hostile fire or friendly fire. It was a mid-air collision. The aircraft that made it back is the KC-135R tail number 8017, a 63 model. That's the 3 in front of the number. According to the Aviation Safety Network, this aircraft was being operated by the 940th Air Refueling Wing, 314th Air Refueling Squadron. That's the squadron out here at Beale Air Force Base in Northern California. Tail number 8017 managed to return to Ben Gurion Airport here near Tel Aviv, Israel. That's where that picture was taken. The second KC-135R that did not make it back is tail number 23556, so a 62 model KC-135R operated from or out of the Andrews Air Force Base, presumably the 459th Air Refueling Wing out of Andrews. Now, regarding who was involved in these crashes, that will come in time once next of kin have been notified. Remember, these aircraft are standardized such that they can be operated by any KC-135 operator, current and qualified, from any different squadron, whether it's Guard, Reserve, or active duty. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it was an Andrews crew that was operating the aircraft that went down at the time of the accident. We don't know yet. A little bit more about the aircraft itself and the model number of the aircraft and why it's important. The KC-135R has been around, well, since this one's been around since 1962, but was retrofitted with the CFM56 high bypass turbofan engines, making it the R model. But the R model, well, it holds nearly 200,000 pounds of fuel that it can deliver to other aircraft. It's vital to any wartime operation to have these tankers up and operational, giving us the global reach of our air power that we know today. But these aircraft do not receive fuel. The R model does not have a receiver up here at the top of the fuselage here to receive fuel. So when I first heard of this mid-air collision with 2 air tankers, my first thought was it was a actual air refueling mission where the collision occurred. As a former 141 pilot, I was air refueling qualified into 141, and I know all the hazards that are associated with this particular mission. But no, that's not the case here. It's the KC-135R/RT aircraft is the only model of KC-135 that can receive fuel. So this was not a mid-air collision during mid-air refueling. It was a mid-air collision getting into a tanker pattern to deliver fuel to other aircraft. Here's a good picture of one of the RT aircraft. There are only 8 KC-135s that are modified to be the RT model, the ability to receive fuel. This was not the case with these 2 aircraft. Now, looking at this Flight Radar 24 data for 8017, the Beale aircraft that made it back, things get a little bit confusing. This aircraft takes off from Israel at 11:31 Z time, 1:30 local time, and does one turn and proceeds to western Iraq. And the ADS-B data disappears off the charts as they head over to Iraq. Then the data returns at 17:14, so there's a big gap in the data until the aircraft returns at 17:14 Z, and then proceeds to do a number of turns off of the west coast of Israel before coming into land. So presumably the mid-air collision occurred shortly before 15Z, and the aircraft did the emergency return back to Israel and then did a controllability check to determine the controllability of the aircraft, and also to help him determine what his landing speeds and configuration he should use for the landing. And presumably somewhere along the line here, he got a battle damage assessment from another aircraft to tell him exactly what sort of damage he has, because remember, there's no way to see your tail from the cockpit of the aircraft. Even the boom operator, he can't see what's going on up there. So he's going to need a battle damage assessment by another aircraft, and he's got to do a controllability check before he comes back in to return to land in Israel. Here's the Flight Radar 24 track of tail number 3556, the Andrews aircraft that did not make it back, departing at 0517 Zulu time, 7 in the morning out of Israel, and then proceeding towards western Iraq, where the data disappears. Now, if this incident occurred at 18Z, that's nearly 12 hours later. These aircraft are capable of extremely long missions. Crew fatigue will definitely be an issue if this was the case. There were 6 crew members on board this aircraft. This aircraft requires a minimum crew of 3. They no longer need navigators on these aircraft, so you have 2 pilots and a boom operator as a minimum. But oftentimes you'll have additional pilots if you're going to go with an augmented crew for a super long crew duty day, or you may have examiner pilots on board, or a crew chief, or somebody observing or examining the boom operator, or maybe the boom operator has a relief individual as well. A total of 6 folks lost on 3556. There's been a lot of nutty airline chatter about parachutes on these aircraft. They're no good. They're not going to help you. They doesn't work. They finally removed them quite a few years ago, 2008, I believe it was. For years, we even had them in the C-130s, parachutes in the C-130. I don't remember us messing with them in the C-141, but they did carry them for years in the tankers here. A 4-engine aircraft. Nobody has ever successfully jumped out of one of these aircraft. It's a pressurized aircraft. It's got the 4 engines on either side of it. Your chances of successfully parachuting out of one of these aircraft are slim to none, and it's never been done before. So in an effort to save money, they finally quit using the parachutes. And in the event of a mid-air collision, the damage is usually severe enough where it's going to be very hard for you to go down to the stairs and put on the parachute and safely get out of the aircraft. So yes, we have no parachutes. No, they are of no practical use on board the aircraft. And of course, there's no ejection seats on these aircraft. Air refueling tracks are set up all around the world. These are some of the practice air refueling tracks over the United States. They're just standard holding patterns. Typical altitudes are between 15 and 25,000 feet, usually refueling around 20 to 25,000 feet in a large holding pattern. Often these holding patterns and these refueling operations are done with 2 aircraft at a time. You have an airborne spare aircraft just in case one of the aircraft is unable to deliver fuel. Well, the show must go on. The aircraft need their fuel. They don't want to divert, even though they've got divert options available. In most cases, there's a second aircraft that's ready to fill in for the first aircraft if there's a problem with the first aircraft, especially if somebody goes up there and bangs up the boom to the point where that boom is no longer operational, which can happen pretty easy if you're too aggressive with your refueling procedures. You can damage the boom of the tanker. Or if that one aircraft has some sort of mechanical problem and has to return to base, then that second aircraft can come into play. But it's the careful coordination of getting these 2 aircraft onto the track and altitude deconflicted that's probably going to be the issue in this mid-air collision. So lots of questions for the folks from CENTCOM at this time. This is an Air Force accident. It will be studied by the Air Force accident investigators. Of course, the NTSB does not get involved in these sort of military accidents, so there will be no preliminary report or some of the standard processes we see with the NTSB. This will be completely investigated internally by the Air Force, and there will be a complete report released in about 2 years' time. Until then, we have very little to go on. Thank you so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks over on Patreon that make this content possible. See you here.